Hello everyone, and I'm back. Well, it's been a while since I made a tutorial. The reason for delay was essentially two things. A, I was being lazy, and B, I wasn't exactly sure how to proceed. So I kind of decided that I'll take a more like a project-based approach. So it's easier to cover a few topics that way, and you also get to do something more practical, rather than just trying to cover like specific concepts. So what we're going to do with this lesson is we're going to create like a procedural terrain, like what you're seeing on the screen right now, which is fairly easily controllable. So the only controlling factor here is the noise offset. Okay, so you can expose a few more controls if you want to, but what we have here is like as I modify the noise, it not only modifies the terrain, it modifies the shape of the river as well. Like you can also define the height of it, and along with that, it also adjusts the tree line. So depending on the slope of these the slope of the mountains, the trees will sort of adjust accordingly. So if the mountains get too tall, then the trees won't go that high. The idea is so you can see how much control you get over the whole thing. So the idea here is like you can use this for an n number of things. Like right now this is fairly stylized, like I made it fairly low poly. Okay, but that's just through like a poly reduce. Okay, so if you want to create even like a high res landscape, then you can do that. Okay, or if you want to create something low poly and use it for like games and stuff, then you can do that as well. So the techniques used in this are fairly basic Houdini stuff. It's nothing complicated. There are very few expressions being used as well. We're not using the Houdini terrain tools for this. Okay, so I'll do another lesson. I'll cover like some of the basics of the terrain stuff, but this is just using like the very standard Houdini stuff. Okay, so this is what we're going to make. So I'll create a new file and we'll get started. Okay, so the one new thing that we'll do in this is essentially building a displacement map through the attribute warp. So that's the one majorly new thing that we'll do. Okay, so what we want to do essentially is we have our landscape, okay, which is essentially just a grid. And then we're going to apply, we're going to do two things. So firstly, we're going to apply like a noise map to this. Okay, so it will sort of become like that. Okay, something like this. But before that, what we'll do is we're going to create a curve, and this will be my river. And we're going to use this to sort of control a certain area where the noise won't affect. Okay, so when we create our landscape, what you'll get is like you'll have like this spot, which is the river, and you won't get anything there. And then the landscape will be like here, okay, on the sides. That's a very terrible looking landscape, but yeah, that's basically what we want to do. And once we have done this much, we are going to calculate two separate areas. Okay, we're going to calculate an area for the tree line, which will be slightly higher. And then we want to calculate an area for the absolute base where we can put in like grass and stuff. So this is essentially what we want to do like overall. Okay, so we're going to start off with a simple grid, and I won't make it too big. Like I'll keep it at 10 by 10. The only thing I want to do is I want it to be triangulated rather than quads. So what you can do is take the rows and columns down to 2 and 2, and then you'll get something called remesh. So remesh is essentially triangulates your mesh. Okay, see, there you go. Just we need it fairly dense. So we're going to bring it down to about 0.05. So it is fairly dense. Not that much. Let's try 0.08. Yeah, I think that's okay. Okay, so the first thing, as I said, is we're going to make a river or a line that will be the basis for our river. So we're going to take a line tool, and this will point in the X direction. Okay, so we're going to take the line and we'll give the direction as X, as 1 in X and 0 here, and make it about 12 in length because our grid is 10. And then we want it about like halfway. So take the length copy the parameter, put it in the origin. Okay, so do relative reference. So it will move to 12, but we wanted to move to like -6. Okay, so we divide it by -2. Okay, so it will be in the middle. Okay, and then give it a fair few points. So give it about like 100 points. Okay, so once we've done that much, I need it to be displaced. Okay, but only like flat, not upwards, just like sideways in like the z-axis. So we are firstly going to give it some normals. Okay, so we're going to take like an attribute wrangle, and we'll say at n is equal to, so at n will activate normals, and we set a value. So type in set and normal round brackets 0, 0, 1. So we're saying like 0 in x and 0 in y and 1 in z, and close it and then semicolon at the end of it. So you'll have normals facing in this direction. Okay, and then in order to displace this, there is a simple node called mountain, and that's what we are going to use. So we're just going to use mountain C. So there you go. So it pushes it in the x, in the z direction. So we want it fairly like smooth and like displaced enough and not very rough. So just like lower the roughness, and you can lower like the lacunarity, which I never understood what that means, but yeah, there you go. Yeah, and then as you modify the offset value, so you can get like different results. So you can offset the y value, you can offset the z, and that will give you like different results. So this is done. Now let's set up the now let's transfer these values onto the grid. So I'll take the grid and I'll make it let's make it black, and I'll take this and do a transfer. So we'll do an attribute transfer. Attribute transfer. And so this and that, and sorry, we need to give a color here. So take a color. This will be red. And we just want to transfer, like this also has normal, so it's trying to transfer normals also. We just want to transfer color. So just type in CD, that's for color. Set the condition to blend and lower the distance threshold and increase the blend width. So you get like a little bit of blending like that. You can lower the remesh value so it gets a little more dense. Yeah, there you go. So this is my river. Okay. So this is step 1. Now what we need to do is firstly I want to store this value in like an attribute. So I'm going to take another wrangle, and we'll create a new attribute called R. So it's going to be a float attribute. So we type F. So F is for float. We say F at R is equal to, so this is the red color. So we say at cd.r. So CD is color and we're extracting the red channel out of it. So what we should get is we'll get an attribute called R. So let's call it the river attribute. You can call it F at river. Like if that's easier for you to remember, then you can just call it F at river. But I keep them small, so I need to type lesser. But if it's going to confuse you in the long run, then you might as well give it names that you will remember better. Okay, so that's done. Now let's set up the, let's do one thing. Let's make this red and let's make this black. Yeah, this is better. Okay, so now the problem is like you can use the mountain SOP here as well. Like if I just plug in a mountain, you'll get like a landscape. See, there you go. But the problem with this is that there's no way to tell it that don't affect the river. It's going to affect everything. So what we do is, which is why we need to go through like the attribute walk. So we're going to like, let me do one thing. I'm going to lower the roughness a little more. No, fine, like that's okay. Let it be. Okay, so we're going to take a warp, look for an attribute warp, and let's call it displace. So if you're from Max or Cinema 4D or any of them, you have like a standard displace modifier. So that's what we're going to build. We're going to build like a displace modifier. But doing it through attribute warp gives you like more controls. Okay, so we'll double click come in and Houdini gives you like a ton of procedural noise maps. Okay, we are going to use the most standard one, which is called the turbulent noise, but you also get something called unified noise, so you can try that as well. It's a little slow, but you can try it. Okay, so just to sort of show how it works is just press tab and take turbulent noise. First thing you need to do is you need to give it like a position value. So just take position and click it to position. Okay, and this will give you like what is the noise, and like if I connect it directly to color, you'll see what it is. See, there you go. And you can have it as a 1D or a 3D noise. We don't want a 3D because they're just supposed to like bring things up and down. And then you have different types of noise. So you have like purlin, you have original purlin, you have a bunch of them. Okay, whichever one you want to use. Okay, so we're going to use alligator. Okay, and so the same way you also get something called unified noise. Okay, we'll take you can take either one of them. So let's take unified noise. Unified noise is pretty huge. It's also slower to calculate because it has like way too many options. So the first thing is you need to look for position. The position in this comes like way down. So connect it to position, and then we can just take the noise and drop it in there. And see, you can see like it's slower. Like this one comes up instantly. This one takes a lot longer. And in here you get a lot more options. So you have like a bunch of them. Like you also get like whirly stuff in here. Okay, and like cracks and this. Then you also get like the other one. So you get like a whole variety of them, which is interesting. See, so you also get like if you just come to say purlin, okay, and you also get like different types of different fractal types. You get like standard, and you get terrain, okay, and you get like hybrid terrain. So you get like a whole bunch of them. But as I said, like this, I'm not using this because it's slow. Okay, like for our purposes right now, you can try using it. Like no issues. Like once you try to recreate this, you can definitely use it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want this has to be in displace. Like it doesn't need to be in color. So I'm going to type in displace, and you'll get something called displace along normal. So take displace along normal, plug the noise into the amount. So just take the noise and plug it into amount, and just the displace position goes to position. So there you go. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to lower the frequency. So I'm going to get it down to about 0.3 is good. 0.3 is fine. You can also lower the roughness a little bit. Okay, and then let's take the scale value to about 5. Yeah, there you go. See, so you have mountains. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to set up a little bit of curve based control to it. So we'll do that. But I also want to make sure that it doesn't affect the river. Okay. So what we do is type in bind, which will allow us to import an attribute, and this will be called R. And so the river area is all black, right? So if you multiply this, what that will mean is like everything here will go down to 0. Okay, because black is 0. So just take a multiply. So drop a multiply in there and plug in the R, and there you go. See, so immediately you have your basic river, okay, which is good. Now the last thing you want to do is I want to give it like a little more control. Like I want some control, like I can define the flat areas to be a little more flatter. So I can push this through a ramp. So I'm going to take a ramp parameter and say let's call this curve, and this will be this will be a spline ramp. So the noise goes into there, and then this sets up in here, and you'll notice everything goes flat simply because like at top level the curve doesn't have anything. Like when I move it up, you'll get the noise back. Okay, so this is set up. Now I want to expose a few parameters from here at top level. So one thing I want to expose is like the scale. So click here on this little gear icon and say promote parameter. And then I also want to expose the offset value. So I'm going to click here and just do promote parameter. If you want, you can expose all of them. Okay, like you can right click here and come to vex options and say create input parameters. Okay, and that will take the entire node and make parameters of it at like top level. But we only want these two, so I'm just working with these two. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to adjust this. So I'm going to take both of these and change these to B-spline, which gives me a little bit smoother curve. What I want is I want to flatten this out. See, so now I can control it. So I can say like this area should be flat and then it should come up. So what you can do is if I want to create them, if I want to convert these into cliffs, right, I can actually convert them into cliffs. So if I turn these back to linear, see, there you go. Okay. So if I take this to linear as well, see, so I can actually like turn them into cliffs if I want that. And then you can like define the height of this. See, so we want to create like cliffs and stuff, you can do that and then offset it till you get, more variety. Maybe, hold on, let me just do one thing. Come into the displace. Yeah, let's promote this as well. Okay. Yeah, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so let me take this back to B-spline, like all of them. Yeah, so you get like a little more. Let's get this a little higher. You can adjust this, like I can scale it up a bit more like that. Like it can overshoot the values if you want that. Okay. Yeah, I think this is good. Yeah, this gives us enough to work with. And you can always like adjust this more so that you want like more flat areas, get this down to 0. Okay. Like we don't want that. Like I don't want it to be like completely flat, but yeah, it gives me some areas to work with. Okay, so this is fine. Okay, now I want the river to go slightly deeper. So we're going to use a little bit of like wrangle to do that. So we'll take a wrangle sop. Let's call this river depth. You can color these, like if you want. So like I can take, like let's say these two are important. So I can just press C and make them, yeah, I think that should be good enough. Yeah, you can see them from far. Okay, so let's take river depth. What I want to do is in the y-axis, I want to push this down. Okay, so I'm going to take at t.y and do a plus equal to, because we want to keep the existing value and then add this to that. Okay, and we're going to do like if I do a 1 minus at r, which is the river attribute, you'll see the river go up. But what I want is I want it to go down. So put this into a bracket and we'll multiply it by a channel, but we'll multiply it in the negative. So we'll do a minus and we'll create a new channel. So just type in ch, that will create a channel for us. Let's call it depth and into this, and then click plus over here. So when you click a plus over there, it will give me the depth value and then just increase it. See, so that gives me the river. So that gives me the basic landscape. Okay, now the last thing we want to do with this is I want to control, like what I want is like when I change the noise values here, it should also modify the river values. Okay, so every time I change the offset, the river should also offset. That's basically what I want to do. So what I can do is I can take the displace, we'll take the offset value, do right click, copy parameter, come into the mountain, come to the offset value of the mountain and do paste relative reference. See, so what that will do is like every time I change the offset here, you'll see the river also being offsetted. So that way you get like a much more procedural terrain. See, like, so as I modify this, you'll keep getting like different shapes for the river. This is how we build the basic terrain. Now I'm going to keep this fairly short. So I don't want to make another like 45-minute, video. So what we'll do is in this part, we'll just cover like the basic landscape. And in the next part, we will cover how to, scatter all the data on this. Okay. So, so that's basically it for this for part 1 of the lesson. Okay, in part 2 we'll make our selections and we will scatter all the trees and the grass in the relevant places.